And we're live. Oh my gosh, it's happening again. We're 1 month later, and here we are. It's suddenly again NET MAUI Community Stand-Up Time. Community Toolkit Stand-Up Maui. I don't know. I always mess up the words. That's what I do. And it's very. So I already warned the rest of my wonderful team that if something goes wrong, don't worry. I didn't melt. It's just my camera melted. That's probably what's going to happen. You might hear a little bit of a fan in the background because it's really hot here. And even if I can sit through this, my computers really cannot. So my computer is also very slow. So I'm gonna hope it's gonna hold together for this. But anyway, that's me. How's everyone else doing? Sean, how's it over there? You're right next to me in the UK. Is the heat wave there going on?
It's not too bad. It's about 24 here. So we had our heat wave a couple of weeks ago. We hit 40, which is pretty crazy for the UK. But that was only for a couple of days. But yeah, good otherwise.
Good. Pedro, you are used to having a lot of warmth, and we had this little chat earlier today. You're in Brazil, and I think it's winter now, but it's still 24 degrees, right? So
yeah, something like
what is that? 70s Fahrenheit, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure how much in Fahrenheit that is, but it's hot for a winter.
Yeah. But otherwise, doing good. Just working on awesome stuff.
Yeah, just coding and drink beers.
That's all there is to it in life, basically. Brandon, what are you doing? You're also used to hot weather, right? I'm complaining to the wrong people here. I think only Vlad and Sean. Those are the people who understand me, basically.
Yeah, no,
but Brandon, how are you doing?
Good. It's sunny. It's in the 80s here in California. I'm gonna swim from Alcatraz this weekend. That's kind of cool.
Why not? Cool. Is that some kind of competition or what's going on?
Yeah, it's a race they do every year. I don't plan on winning it, but I do plan on surviving it. But it's something I've been trying to do for, 5 years now. I've signed up for the race every year, and
oh, cool.
One year the race get canceled because the Coast Guard said the seas were too rough. Then COVID, and then yeah.
All right.
Hopefully we'll do it. I'll throw something up on Twitter after the race.
Yeah.
We can celebrate together.
Love to see it. All right, awesome. We'll get a little insights in the developers of the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit right here. Vlad, what's going on with you?
I am fine. In Ukraine, this week we have a raining almost all the week, so it's pretty warm and it's a comfortable temperature. 22 degrees, 23.
Good. That sounds lovely. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. I guess that's why people are here. We also have George in the chat. I don't know if that happened last time. Maybe I think we just merged the avatar view, which he's been helping us out on, and he's asking me very nicely, Gerald, how did new flooring go? Well, it's still not here yet, so it's still ongoing. Little bit of a side story. We're redoing our house a little bit, and I hurt my hand. That's what George saw last time, I think. But the new flooring, there is concrete in there, and it needs to dry for a couple of weeks. So we're basically sitting, waiting for that, and hopefully by the end of September. So that's not even like next month's stream. Oh my gosh, I can't even think how long it's going to be. It's going to take still a while, but thank you for asking. All right, .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. That's also hopefully it's going to be a very long project, a very long-lived project. Here we have the avatar view, and that's why we did. What did we release last time? Because I see here in the notes we have the 1.1.0 release. Did we do that for last time? I think those were followed 20 days, so that should be after our previous stream as well. But we talked about this. I remember now. So we added for that our Roslyn analyzer, and I say we so that we look good. But actually, I think Brandon and Pedro and some other people from the community. Actually, Brandon, tell all about it. You know all about it. Give us the.
I was pointing up to Pedro. That was all Pedro's handiwork. I started the PR and then realized I had no idea what I was doing, and then Pedro came in and saved it.
Cool. So basically what you need to do in order to use the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, you have to have that little initialization line, right? Which now goes to the generic host builder that's in .NET MAUI, so that's really awesome. And this is a fun story, actually. this line, we added a little Roslyn analyzer, so if you forget it, we will actually throw a build error and say, hey, you didn't add this, so it's not going to work. Please add it. And today, so this is kind of like to prevent that you have to read the documentation, right? Because people are going to be like, oh, how do I get started? I don't know, check the documentation, can't find it. And actually today we got a PR from someone in the community, thank you for that, who actually went out to our documentation and said, hey, this piece is missing. I don't have that initialization line, so we actually didn't have it in the doc. See, so oh well, we're not doing a great job there, but we have it now in the docs. We have a Roslyn analyzer. There is no way you're going to forget this initialization line, and of course we have a bunch of other stuff in here. Bugs are fixed, some other cool things. And then right after, we merged the avatar view and we went to 1.2.0. But the avatar view is kind of like the big thing. We got a handful of bug fixes in here as well. But, you know, we have the avatar view now. George did that, so thank you so much. And we're looking forward to the next community PR so we can launch 1.3.0 very soon. All right. What else do we got for today? Typically, what we do, we have some proposals to vote on. And I see here in my show notes that there is one proposal by Sean. Actually, I think George was involved in this one as well, right? So I'll let you talk about this because I was kind of like only following the chat. But we're talking about the Gravatar image source. What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's right. So I think the proposal is still yet to be approved, but George has ploughed on and worked out what needs to be done and started looking into that with a draft PR. So the concept is you can do the fancy little Gravatar image and pass that into an image control, any control that can render an image source. And I think it comes originally from the Xamarin Community Toolkit, so it's kind of bring other bits of functionality across. So yeah, like I say, George has ploughed in and done a fair bit of digging. I think he's uncovered a bug or two in .NET MAUI itself. And yeah, I want to bring it up and see if we can vote to approve it at least. Certainly make sure that George's work doesn't go unused. But it's just looking good actually. I think we've had a chat today and it's looking like if we approved it, it could probably be done relatively soon.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this, and I think originally Dan Siegel came up with this, which is, of course, perfectly fine and great in the Xamarin Community Toolkit. And for those not aware, Gravatar is kind of like a service that try to kind of unify your avatars everywhere. So if a site supports it, and actually Stack Overflow does it, for instance, you can have kind of like this cryptic little avatar thing whenever you don't set a picture, or you can link a picture to an email address, and then whenever they have Gravatar support, it will automatically pick up on the avatar that you set to that email address. So that's a thing that you can kind of like do with this as well. We don't capture any telemetry from like any of the toolkits. My gut feeling says that this is something a small subset of the developers use, but still, you know, it doesn't really hurt to have it in here. It's not something that is high maintenance as well. So I would say, yeah, let's take it in.
Yeah, and Sean, I know to fill everybody in, George, thanks for opening up the PR. And Sean, you mentioned you chatted with George a little bit, and we're hoping to simplify it a little bit. I looked at the PR from George, and it's impressive. George, you did a ton of engineering work. I was personally expecting just one class inheriting from image source, probably even just like a copy paste from Xamarin Community Toolkit. But yeah, so Sean, fill us in. What's the latest and kind of what's the plan forward that you chatted about with George?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the complexity around what George has had to do is it comes from the fact that image source didn't support caching, and therefore had to dig around in MAUI to work out how caching was done. And the class that kind of exposed the caching is sealed, so we couldn't inherit from that. So he's had to kind of bring bits in and then pick apart what it is. So that's the URI image source that George has just put up in the comments. And it's taken a bit of digging around. I think actually a lot of the stuff that George pushed up has kind of helped my journey in having a bit of an investigation. And we've now got to the point where we think we can write our own Gravatar image source, but use the URI image source service to do the caching and the loading for us. It's just it was a little bit strange in the fact that because you've got there's a stream image source and a URI image source, and they've both got their own individual image source services, but the URI one expects the behavior from the stream and the URI image source service. So it was a bit of kind of fiddling around, tweaking bits until we worked out what needed to be set. But it looks like it's possible, and caching is working. I think the one bit that George has uncovered is that caching is not supported on Windows yet, and there's comments and there's a bug raised against .NET MAUI, and I think we leave that responsibility on .NET MAUI. I think caching on Windows is probably the least important out of all the platforms, given it's probably going to have a better, potentially more reliable internet connection than a mobile with mobile data. So actually, caching that's probably slightly less important.
Makes sense. So with the public APIs, we're talking about a little bit about having any public API we expose, then we have to have unit tests for, and we were talking about scaling back some of the public APIs that were in the initial draft. What do those look like now, Sean? Is it basically just
it can match what's on screen? Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Although I don't know, there will be a detail to flesh out in terms of the size, because I think some of the effort that George has put in as he's worked out that he can size the image source to the control it's in, so actually it stretches to fit. So if you have an image that's large, it will do the sizing for you. Whether we need the specific property to override that if we want to, we can, or we just rely on the control itself. But that's a detail we'll work on, I think.
Yeah, it sounds good enough for a V1. Sounds like a fun new feature for a V2. Cool.
So yeah, I know there's a bit of concern that we'd be exposing more than we thought we needed to, but that's just the uncovering of the way that what MAUI offered. But I think we can potentially match what's in that design proposal section there now. This is a bit I think you're talking about, isn't it, Brandon, in the terms of the image source services?
Yeah, that was my big concern, was if we have a public service, then that will allow developers to use that service for anything they want. And if we're designing a service to be very unique for this one specific use case, then if folks are using it for something else, then they're probably going to find some edge cases, bugs where it doesn't work for things that we hadn't thought of. And then, yeah, next thing you know, we're fixing bugs on a service that we didn't really intend to create. Or
which we might now be doing with the .NET MAUI. They might not have intended us to be using.
Touche, .NET MAUI. Cool. Well, that's it for me. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, George.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. So
do we need to officially vote this in existence? Yeah, Sean, like you said.
So
is there anyone?
I think I've already put my hand up to say I would vote for it, but I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Sure.
George is putting a thumbs up.
Let's do it. Yeah, show of hands. All approve.
Yay.
All right. Then we don't even have to see who opposes because it's unanimous. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I'll go ahead and pop this into the approve column. Microsoft Bot should do the rest for us. And
emails.
Look forward to another new feature in the Community Toolkit. Thanks, George. Thanks, Sean.
Credit to George.
Cool. All right, so we'll be looking forward to that one. What else do we got? We got open PRs because Vlad has been doing some amazing work on the expander.
Yeah. As for this feature, actually in the .NET MAUI there are two different approaches how you can probably create controls. The simple one is when you inherit from existing control, like grid, for example, and the more difficult control approach where you need to create a handler and you need to create different implementation for different controls. So with Expander, I tried two different approaches. Let me share my screen. I will show you how it works. A second. So how it's, for example, in Android application, we have a the first one is a handler architecture, and the second one is a shared control, which is probably just almost copy paste of what we had in Xamarin Community Toolkit. In terms of visualization, they works almost the same. So we both have animations. We have multi-level expander where you can have expander inside of another expander. In list view, behavior is a bit different, where because list view doesn't automatically recalculate and the size of the cell, and it works the same both implementation, while in collection view it works great, where it's automatically recalculated. So it's approach how it works on Android, but why I decided to create two different uh, implementations is because of Windows, where we actually have a native control which called Expander. So in Windows Expander, it has its own template. You can see the difference here, where Expander has some padding, the chevron button. When you click, it has some background, and it uh, visualization is a bit different. Also, it has some different behavior on list view, while in collection view, it for some reason doesn't display. So question which I have currently, what should we, how should we continue working with Expander? How we want to implement it? Should we use Expander from Windows? In that case, uh, we'll need to implement handlers for and native controls for Android and iOS and Catalyst, or we can inherit from grid or some base control which already exists in .NET MAUI, where the benefit we have less code, we have the same visualization on all platforms, but we don't use this existing control designed by Windows by WinUI.
Yeah, I would say to use the shared layer because will be less control and also can take advantage of content template that will can make possible to devs to customize even more the how the expander will look like. And but we need to see what we can do for the collections, because looks like just the Windows versions work for list, and the shared layer doesn't work at all for any kind of list.
It works for list as well. So problem here is it's a control. So when expander is list view inside Windows application, it works great. When we
No, I
put it
mean on the
in
Android, for
collection view,
example.
yeah, in collection view it has some unexpected behavior. On Android, the behavior is opposite, where in list view it's mm, cell size is not changed, while collection view on Android and the iOS works great and recalculate it and display all content.
Is that something
Also,
we can
another,
potentially look into to see if we can force list view to resize, or is that a list view issue?
I tried to call a method called force force cell size, something like that. Unfortunately, I didn't receive the result which I expected, so the cell size remains the same. Probably need to investigate it a bit more. But yeah, on Windows, it's definitely something weird with collection view, and it's different control. I don't want to make some code inside of, for example, expander, which should depend and call some code of the parent. So, for example, if there will be another control which called another collection container, and it will our expander will not work inside of it. So it would be nice if parent view automatically recalculate its size, like it works here with list view, for example. So it would be the best approach for us. Yeah, and also the benefit of shared implementation, we can make expander work in all directions. For now, the limitation of Windows implementation, it can be up, it can like expand up and down. But with our current custom implementation, we can extend it in any direction.
Yeah.
I want to say it sounds like having a shared layer is probably the least amount of work, but when you then start to look at some of these strange bits of behavior, I mean,
Yeah,
they
I
might be
mean,
bugs on the platforms that they're running on, rather than things that we need to fix, but we'd be shipping something that didn't behave as expected.
And
I remember we had a lot of issue with shared implementation on Xamarin Community Toolkit. That is why I started with like handler approach and tried to replicate WinUI, but then found that probably shared is simpler, requires less code, because on iOS, for some reason, expander with handler architecture didn't render it at all. But yeah, it's my implementation, so yeah, please ignore it.
yeah, the only thing I can think of, and I don't think this is a blocker, but if we were to try and promote Expander into .NET MAUI, would the .NET MAUI team want it to be implemented using all the native controls with handlers? I don't know, but I'm kind of thinking right now, it sounds like the simplest way forward and also with the best results is to go not go that route, use a shared layer, and then maybe we could come back to it and implement it natively using handlers. But Gerald, what do you think? And I'm also curious, Gerald, what about list view? I remember when collection view first came out, there was talks about then deprecating list view, but is list view deprecated, or do we still need to support that?
Not officially. I'm not really sure why that is. I think because still a lot of people are using list views, I think. And also because in collection view, I think there's still some things to iron out. So until we kind of have the feeling that this is really, a stable control, a really good replacement for the whole list view, then we're going to actually deprecate it. And also kind of like, we are now stuck in this yearly cycle, right? Because we're part of .NET with .NET MAUI. So that means that we only kind of like get the chance to deprecate something once a year. So, it's also going to be a little bit slower, basically. And we've not deprecated that much. Actually, also in Xamarin as well. But anyway, yeah. I while you were talking about this, I've been going back and forth, like the very paradigm, the idea of .NET MAUI basically is to map everything to the controls, how they look and feel on that platform. So that kind of part of me says like, yeah, we should use the WinUI stuff at least, and at least the people on Windows will have like the familiar look and feel. But on the other hand, there's 2-3 platforms that don't even have it. So why shouldn't we then maybe have this shared thing so that it at least looks like consistent across all the platforms, and we get all the benefits like the template that Pedro mentioned and whatnot. So yeah.
Also, I want to add, like, I believe this is just this control on the .NET MAUI that has built on top of the shared layer, that is the radio button control that you can customize with templated view and etc. So maybe you can use it as a argument to accept the expander being supported be built on top of the shared layer.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a choice that I think we need to go on if we want to make the rest of the stuff happen as well. We made that choice at some point with, I think, the radio button. I think that was kind of like, or the checkbox. That's kind of like around the time where we also diverted a little bit of the paradigm, like we're mapping stuff to whatever the controls are on the platform, because iOS doesn't really have the concept of a checkbox and a radio button. So, we kind of had to create our own thing there, which we really didn't have to do up till that point. So we're kind of doing that now anyway. So, this might be a good candidate, but it might also be it might be a good thing to maybe discuss with the .NET MAUI team, and to just, I'm keeping my eye on the chat, and George is asking, like, is the end goal for the Maui Community Toolkit code to make it into .NET MAUI? I would say not necessarily, not everything, but there is definitely, as I think it's safe to say that for all the controls and the behavior, all the converters and behaviors and that kind of stuff, that's not likely to end up in .NET MAUI directly. But for the controls, who knows? And definitely also not everything. But if we manage to create a good control that is stable, that is mature, that can do a lot of stuff, and people seem to want it, then sure, why not? And then I'm thinking of, like, media element. It still personally hurts me that we still don't have a media element inside of .NET MAUI in the box. Like the camera view is one of them. I don't know, those kinds of stuff, and maybe the expander can definitely be on there as well. So George, nothing personal, but for like the avatar view, I don't know, could be, but that would be, that's kind of like where I think, like, is that going to be something everyone wants to use? I don't know. But it's kind of like, it's not really a hard to find thing. And kind of like your second question, therefore, should we write code with that aim? I would say yes. I would say, if that tells us something about the quality that it should be, of course. So we're not an official kind of like project, so we have a little bit of, leeway there to play a little bit and let it mature with us. But I think we should always write the best code we can and aim that it should end up in some other product that we look up to, right? I don't know what we were talking about. So I think for the expander, I think we maybe need to think a little bit about it more. Maybe discuss with like the rest of the .NET MAUI team, see what they think. Also, like in WinUI, is this finalized now, or is this still in like a test phase? Do you know, Vlad? Or
as for WinUI, I think it's already in production. Like,
Okay,
so
cool.
it's final version. I think, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's unless anyone has really something to say about this, let's move on a little bit. We actually have an open PR. Vlad, are you blocked now on anything? Okay, let's put it that way. Are you blocked? Are you blocked on our decision right now on what we should do? Then maybe we should actually make a decision.
I can wait, let's say, till tomorrow.
For tomorrow, we can do tomorrow.
No,
all right, sure.
I definitely not blocked. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
It's
we'll
better
discuss a
to
little
wait
bit
a
more.
bit. Yeah, let's discuss a bit more and wait the right decision.
Yeah, and Vlad, which way do you recommend going? Since you're the one who's closest to all this.
Well, on in terms of simplicity, I would definitely choose Sheriff. In terms, and of course, in terms of customization. You, but on Windows, especially, I would prefer to use native control. But one thing which I don't like that I need to anyway override like the template because, for example, I imagine where I can use like expander. You can imagine floating action button and which can expand it up and down, for example. And I do not want to have a chevron button there, for example. So probably shared implementation will suits better for more scenarios in terms of customization because from my point of view, users can customize their expander to look the same as native uh, implementation from WinUI. So the shared implementation, I would go with it.
Right on. And yeah, I mean, there's the functionality, similar functionality across every platform versus totally native on every platform. And yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the shared functionality. It'll look the same. That's I think what a lot of folks expect. They wouldn't want to test out their app on iOS, then run it on Windows after publishing it to the store and finding out that it looks different. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Vlad, I trust you. Whichever way you think is best to move forward, because if we go forward with the shared implementation, we can always make changes on the back end and add in handlers later if the .NET MAUI team comes back and says something like, we'd love to have Expander promoted into official .NET MAUI library, but we need handlers. So maybe that's just a bridge we cross later.
Yeah, this
Sounds
implementation
good.
will this implementation will remain in repository, so we can always back to it and just restore the
Exactly.
changes.
Cool. That's why we use Git. Everything is there. We have the whole history. All right. So Vlad, I see a lot of discussions by you as well. um, the source generation by bindable property. I've seen, I think, multiple projects who are doing this because bindable property is something that is used with Xamarin Forms with .NET MAUI, and you basically it's like the same with like all the this reminds me. Sorry, totally off topic. We have the .NET Community Toolkit, who just launched earlier today their version 8.0 stable version, which is like the MVVM toolkit that we've been talking about. They have some other cool stuff as well. So huge congratulations to that team. There's a blog post just out. Brandon's going to find the link right now and put it in the chat. So they have all the amazing stuff. So congratulations to them for pulling this off. I've heard nothing but good about their toolkit basically. So our kind of like neighboring project, which is really amazing. But where I was going with is like the same stuff that you're doing with like the property changed and all that kind of stuff with MVVM. They took that away with like the source generators, and now we have the same things with the bindable properties, which is very specific to .NET MAUI. So that's why it's not in that toolkit. And that's also like you can almost copy and paste those bindable properties, change one or two things, and then it's exactly the same, right? You have a couple of variations, but it's definitely something that you don't want to be doing. It's also very easy to make mistakes because you're copying and pasting it. You forget to do one thing and suddenly it's not working again. So let's fix that with source generators. A couple of projects are already doing that, and Vlad is going to convince us why this needs to be in the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit.
Yeah, source generators becomes very important part of nowadays development, and it really helps us to reduce the line of codes which we actually create and automate this process. For example, in this example, you see that usually when you need to create a bindable property, you first create a static property, and then you just create a general property where you can get value and set value of that bindable property. And you imagine that you have a lot of bindable properties, for example, like we have an avatar view on other controls, and how it can be simplified. You can just write something like that and create it in 2 lines of code, where it automatically generate. Let me zoom it a bit. So source generator automatically generate you bindable property and create that general property, which you can then later use in your application. So that's it. It's just to, it will not give you some like new feature. It's just to reduce the number of lines which you need to create. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I would recommend, because the only downside I can think of, and not for the feature, but for us as implementers, maintainers, is there's a lot of options. There's a lot of overloaded methods for .create. And so I think the best thing to do to start is to create this bindable property attribute that works for the most common scenario. Like, most bindable properties are created the same way, but there are a couple times or a couple scenarios where you might want to do things a little differently, or maybe you want to trigger a method when the property changes. And so do we need that for the very first implementation? Probably not, but we should build the attribute in mind that we want to expand it. But yeah, in the sample app, the community toolkit itself is a great example. So whenever this proposal is implemented, we can literally just go through the sample app, or not the sample app. I keep saying sample app. Go through the library and actually implement it and find out like, what features are we missing? Does this API design make sense the way we need to use it in the library? So yeah, I'm super on board for this. I don't think we need to implement every scenario for version 1 of it. I think we can implement it in a way that we have this default scenario that we implement first, and then yeah, we'll be able to expand it. Like, we're showing a string here. Maybe we have properties instead, or maybe, we could have a type. So you could do bindable property of type string, or actually that probably doesn't make sense because this is string. I don't know. There's all sorts of scenarios I could see us adding on, but yeah, I'd say let's keep it simple first. Let's make sure it works with 80% of our existing bindable properties, and then take it from there.
If you scroll down a little bit, I have made some proposals there, because like using a field is something that I would like to avoid, because yeah, this one, because if you have that field, since you are using attribute, that field is nothing less than like a holder for that attribute, and that at the end of the day will consume space in memory and stuff like that. So like for big objects and low-end devices, that could be bad, you know. And so I would like to I proposed there a bindable property that we can do in the class level. And now with some C#11 changes, I think that we can use that even better, because C#11 will allows us to create generic attributes. So for example, instead of specifying the return type as a type of string, you can just use a generic like string, and that will simplify a lot the size of that attribute. The first one is like the full with all the customized properties for the bindable property.create method, and the second line is like just change 2 of them, and the rest is like default values. So we don't need to have a big attribute declaration. And another idea is to use inside of the onProperty change method, if you have one, like when you need to specify a property change delegate, we can use that inside the method as well. I already have this implemented, and I know that a lot of community members offers their code to us to implement, so we can try to merge those features and come with one implementation of that. And maybe we can release that as internal first, like Brandon mentioned, that we can use on our own library and see how that goes. And when we feel comfortable, we can just make the API public.
Yeah, I agree that we first need to try it on our own library, our own sample, see how it works, and then definitely make it public.
Yeah, sounds good. And especially like that's what I noticed, that we had a couple of different projects and libraries that are converging on our location, who are doing the same thing. So they have some ideas, maybe some experience already, and we should definitely take their learnings and make the best version out of all of those. Personally, I was looking at this one. I didn't really like the BP source gen BP creation naming kind of thing, but maybe that's just me. So we can make this work. But I would definitely want some sort of variation. I would love to have this. So definitely move forward with that one.
Yeah, I agree. Every time I create a bindable property, I have to go back and look at what I created previously to remember the syntax. And so I love this, that it just kind of
I think
shepherds you
Legend
through.
has it that there's just one bindable property that's like bindable property 0, and basically everyone is just copy and pasting that one. All right. What else we got? So Vlad, a bottom sheet. I've been hearing a lot about a bottom sheet, because if you aren't aware, we're going way over time here, but I don't care anymore. It was Maui UI July for the past month, which was organized by Matt Goldman. I saw his name just scroll by somewhere as well. He's very involved. And one of the entries, so if you don't know what that is, each day of the month has a blog post or some piece of content that has to do something with .NET MAUI, and specifically with the UI. Oh, here we are. One of the entries was by Naweed, who is creating awesome stuff as well. And in this case, he has been creating a bottom sheet, which is something that a lot of people, I think, also want. So then kind of like, with these things that I find awesome, that I'm kind of like triggered, then I want to make this part of the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit and take this to a bigger audience. So Vlad, we already have a discussion about this, or what's going on?
Yeah, so if you are not familiar with this feature, you probably already see it mostly in iOS, where it's like a native control. I think it's called like action sheet. And on other controls, you can implement it like it's displayed on this video. So we already had some discussion about it after we created a snack bar and then pop-up. So another question which we probably already discussed, should it be like a native implementation if we have it on iOS and then implement it on other controls, or we should go like proposed here with just a grid, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a grid with a border. And
I guess the first question I have is, does Android, Windows, and iOS all have native implementations that we can use?
I think only iOS has it. I haven't seen such native.
That'll make it tough.
I'm not sure. I would. Is this okay? One sentence at a time. Is there a thing that, I mean, you could do this on iOS, but is it an actual like controller thing? I'm not even sure. Because you see this concept both on iOS and Android. I worry more about like the desktop platforms for sure, how this is going to work and look like. But
for iOS, if I'm not wrong, is kind of new. The Apple added on the modal presentation new enumerator
UI sheet
for bottom sheet
presentation control.
I believe it's iOS is 15 dot something that is supported.
You're right. Now that
iOS
you're saying it,
UI sheet.
yeah. So iOS kind of like has a very native implementation. I mean, for Android, it is an existing concept. So for Android, we can do it as well. But how is it going to look like on Windows and Mac Catalyst? That's kind of I guess this would be then, because it's on iOS, it's also on Mac Catalyst. It's kind of small on my screen, but does it say Mac Catalyst there in one of the tags?
It does. It's zoom in. There it is.
Boom. See?
So how far back, Gerald, do you know how far back the .NET MAUI support goes for iOS?
Yeah, I think all the way back to iOS 10. But Mac Catalyst only exists since like 14 or something. So,
gotcha. All right, that's something we'd want to keep in mind. That.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting for also .NET MAUI with like this kind of stuff.
I remember from the Xamarin Community Toolkit we have, I believe, a menu sidebar control that maybe we can use as a bottom sheet because it allows to present a view from top and bottom, left and right, just like a bottom sheet. I believe it's menu side view, the control is already implemented.
We haven't migrated it to, I even don't remember if we're going to migrate it to the NET MAUI Community Toolkit.
No, isn't migrated yet, but I mean, we can grab that implementation and use it as a bottom sheet, maybe.
It's a question, can we reuse probably pop-up? Maybe. Just the question, can pop-up be dynamically resized when you drag it?
Yeah, but not for desktop. For example, on Windows, wherever you click, the pop-up will disappear.
Yeah.
So it sounds like step one is, let's figure out how we do it in Android and Windows. Because on iOS, it exists in iOS 15. We could probably leverage that. And then, maybe there's a world where Vlad, like you did for Snackbar, where Snackbar used the native Android implementation, but we had to customize it for the other platforms. Maybe that's how we move forward with this as well. But yeah, it sounds like we need to figure out Android and Windows.
So yeah, so my thinking now is like, I would be very interested what this looks like on Mac Catalyst, basically, because whatever they have, we could kind of mimic in Windows then, I guess. And for Android, like I said, they have. I think Google is a big fan of like the bottom sheets, right? So I think they have implementation. We could pull something out for that. But yeah, there's still some stuff to figure out here, definitely.
There is something called a bottom sheet behavior in the Google Docs.
Here we go.
So there is something around that might.
Something. Cool. All right, there is one discussion left, but maybe to give that some attention too, let's skip over to Brandon's baby and talk a little bit about the MAUI Community Toolkit markup stuff. Brandon was looking like, oh my gosh, what's my baby? I don't know. I see Sean's name now. Oh. So you fight. Brandon, Sean, who's going to talk about this? I'll let you talk. I don't know anything about the...
Yeah, no, this is all Sean.
Yes, this came up, I think, myself and Brandon chatted about this some time ago when we were going through a list of things that we could add. And I just got around to actually documenting it. And it's the idea of being able to fluently assign semantic information to aid building accessibility support into your app. So I've covered the three main semantic properties that we do with extension methods. The automation ones I've removed. I'm not suggesting we add those three there that you can see, because at least according to the MAUI docs, those have been superseded by the semantic properties options. It's just the other extra two, which is included in accessible tree and excluded with children. Oh, and I've copied. There's a copy and paste error there because I've put that second method is wrong. Shouldn't be heading level. It should be is an accessible tree. But yeah, so it's whether we want to go ahead and add this in.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sean. I love this. Definitely something we want to get in because we should be encouraging developers to include the semantic descriptions. I have a selfish question. I don't know if anybody knows the answer. In Xamarin Forms, when we would use automation ID for things like UI testing. What property do we use now in .NET MAUI for that?
Does that not still exist in automation properties?
I think so. I think what's happening. I think you should still use automation. Is it gone? Am I saying?
Right. Automation ID was just a general property, wasn't it? I think it wasn't.
Yeah. So I think what was happening in Xamarin Forms is that we were abusing that by mapping it to the accessibility things on the platforms. So I think what you should be doing now, but this is I haven't verified it, but so please tell me if I'm wrong. I think you can still use the automation ID, and we're actually using it properly now in .NET MAUI. And we're not mapping it to any of the accessibility stuff because George rightfully says in the chat, accessibility shouldn't be an afterthought. And that's something that we are really doing with .NET MAUI because we have one or two people who are very passionate about making that happen for .NET MAUI. And it's even encouraged from like leadership and whatnot. So that's a big focus from us as well. To now incorporate accessibility from the beginning. We enabled all that stuff in kind of like retrofitted, where it was kind of an afterthought from Xamarin Forms inside of the Xamarin Community Toolkit. But now, most of that stuff has moved from the Xamarin Community Toolkit into .NET MAUI directly. So it's even in like the file new .NET MAUI app template. So we have all the stuff there. This is just to enable it also for through the markup extensions. But yeah, I think that's the story now for the automation ID. But we're good to look into it and let you know. How much time do you got? Only a couple of minutes. I think in kind of like the same corner. Oh, did you want to bring something up, Brandon? Sorry.
Oh, just seeing if we want to do a quick vote on this. Assuming, Sean, that's what you wanted to do today.
Yeah. I'm happy.
Oh, it's a proposal. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do it.
So who does not want to support accessibility?
And it's approved.
Boom.
Actually, we still need to champion it. So let's get Sean. I assume that'll be you.
Yeah, I'll happily take it.
Right on. Thank you. And approved. All right. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So I'm not sure if we can cover anything in that time. So maybe we should not even try. I don't know. Oh, we're going to try. Okay. Support app theme bindings. Go. Also, Sean, you're going to talk about this. I think this is kind of like in the same ballpark, right? We have the app theme bindings.
Yes. So actually, we've had a community PR come in to provide light and dark mode support into the sample app to show how it could be done. And it's the idea of kind of investigating into this and trying to work out how we think we might want to expose it in terms of in a fluent manner. Because obviously it's quite easy to do it in a binding in your XAML. But when you actually start to look at C#, it becomes a little less pleasant to write.
It's very different. I like this idea, Sean, where we have the extension class.
I think I may have. I'm not sure we need the extension there. I think we might just be able to use the binding itself. That might just be because because the other thing is that app theme binding is internal to MAUI, but obviously we can make full use of it, can't we?
We do have secret access.
Yeah. And
I see. Here's from yesterday.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I kind of forgot about this, but the PR that came in to
I see.
give me some
light dark. Interesting.
It's not something we have to rush, but that's something I thought I'd bring up and we can think about.
Yeah, the only hesitation I have here is we would have to do this for every method. We'd have to have an overload for light mode, dark mode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I almost wonder if the other way is the easier way. Where we just have the app theme binding extension class that you can pass in as a single value. So instead of passing in a color, you can pass that in for your app theme binding. But no, I agree.
And
This doing
source
dark
gener-
mode, light mode is hard in C#.
and source generators automated for us for each property, so we do not like make it only once.
We're just going to have a project of source generators, aren't we, by the end? Yes, it's worth looking at, though, isn't it? If that's what we end up wanting to expose, a method where they could set each property. I mean, obviously, the building of the style makes it a little bit less verbose, I think. Well, at least you don't have to call the method so in multiple places because you can define the style at the app level. And you don't have to have one function there or method per property type you're doing because you specify the property in the method to the style setter.
Yeah, because if you look at the PR that came in to add light mode, dark mode to the sample app, which thank you, thank you so much for submitting that. It aligns pretty closely to how I did it for my app Get Trends, where you just create your own custom resource dictionary and then use dynamic resources. But yeah, I don't know. I love the idea of making this simpler, selfishly as a C# UI developer. But yeah, this might be a tough one.
I mean, maybe that approach is more fitted to building it fluently, like you say. If the contributor who's provided it, I forget the name now, and yourself have done it that way, maybe that's the better way to do it. I'm just thinking because I'm more heavily XAML focused. That's how I'm used to thinking.
No, I think it should be as easy to do as it is in XAML. That's something I've always felt. But the problem with the way we're doing it, or we're forced to do it now, is it's a lot of code, and because it doesn't work exactly similar to how it works in XAML, basically discovering how to do it in C# is difficult. Like, I remember it took me a couple weeks, maybe a couple months to figure out how to do it. And I just kind of made it up because there's no documentation around it. Everything was focused on here's how to do it in XAML. So yeah, I think if we can get it closer to how to do it in XAML, then it'll be more discoverable. It'll feel more natural. And we could help developers write less code, which is ultimately the goal, these C# extension methods. But yeah, I love it, man. I just think it's going to be hard to implement this, like, because we've got to get it working with all the existing extension methods, or we should. So how do we do that? Can you make an extension for an extension method? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. But
There's
I like
not
where this is going.
There's not too many things that you set for light and dark theme. Was that famous last words now?
I mean,
Coloring,
everything in the UI, or every UI element, I should say. Yeah.
For the color, yeah. But most things have a background color. We expose it off.
Color.
Well, that would be visual element, wouldn't it? I think. So that's just one. That's not. You don't have to do like one for label, one for UI entry.
Yep. Okay. So
maybe I'll leave it and I'll try and flesh out a bit more detail as to what that would entail, and maybe see if there's ways to iterate on alternative approaches.
Makes sense. Well, that was the last one on the agenda. Holy cow. We're only 5 minutes over time. Vlad, Pedro, Sean, any final words before we sign off until we meet
Looks
next month?
like George has a question. Maybe you can address that question. It's about the Discord channel. If I'm not wrong, we have that conversation before, and we decided to not change the name of the channel, neither create a new channel for the Maui Community Toolkit, right? And do you still believe that is the case?
I'll be honest. I don't check the Discord server that much, but I think we should have a Maui Community Toolkit channel, because if people are going to come in, like, they're hopefully we'll get all these new developers that never used Xamarin before, that may have never used Xamarin Community Toolkit before, and they might come to the Discord server looking for Maui Community Toolkit channel. And yeah, why not give us a space to hang out and chat?
What if we just rename the channel like Xamarin Community Toolkit / Maui Community Toolkit? Because in future, I think we will not have Xamarin Community Toolkit channel at all.
I don't know if everyone's willing to part ways with Xamarin Community Toolkit just yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the dates, but it will be, Xamarin Community Toolkit will be deprecated alongside Xamarin Forms. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but yeah, I'd say we could either create the new channel or add, like Vlad said, add the Maui Community Toolkit name into the existing channel, and then in a couple years when Xamarin Community Toolkit's deprecated and nobody's using Xamarin Forms anymore, then we can rename it again.
Makes sense.
Do we know do you know, Brandon, who can do that?
I have no idea.
I can take a look on that and tell you who has the power to create and manage channels on that server.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks, Pedro. And are you in Sam Basu's house, by the way?
He likes that background, doesn't he?
Background?
Oh, sorry? Oh, no, this is a fake background.
Oh. I've seen
Is
Sam
that the
use
question?
it. Yeah. Sam from Telerik.
Oh,
he used that same background when he hosted that one day .NET Maui conference that we spoke at. So I thought you were playing a joke on it.
No, this is a built-in from the StreamYard.
That makes so much more sense. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We've got a lot of work still coming ahead, and we'll definitely appreciate all the community contributions that are still coming. So anything you heard us talk about today, feel free to chime in, join the discussions, join the conversations and the proposals and the pull requests, because ultimately we do this for you, for the community. So whatever we can do to make it better, let us know, and please do help in where you can. And with that, we'll see everybody next month for September's stand-up.
Bye-bye.